Germany, autumn 1923. A woman is pushing a wheelbarrow down a street in Berlin, and the wheelbarrow is full of money. Billions, actual billions.
And she's not rich, is she?
No, she's going to buy bread. That's a wheelbarrow of cash for a loaf of bread. And here's the part that gets me. She leaves the wheelbarrow outside the shop for 1 second, and somebody steals it.
Somebody steals the wheelbarrow?
They dumped out the money and took the wheelbarrow. The container was worth more than the contents.
And that's not a folktale. That's just Tuesday in 1923. People were burning banknotes in the stove because the money was cheaper than firewood. Kids were building little block towers out of bricks of cash. There's a story about a man who offered a coffee for 5,000 marks, and then by the time he finished it, the second cup cost 9,000.
The price went up while he was drinking it.
At the peak, $1 was worth about 4.2 trillion German marks, a number that doesn't even mean anything to a human brain.
Okay, so that's the funny, horrible version. Here's the part that stops being funny. The country this is happening to is arguably the most advanced country on Earth. The most educated. Germany in the 1920s is the center of world physics, world philosophy, world music. It's Einstein's country. It's a democracy with one of the most progressive constitutions anybody had ever written.
And 10 years later, it's the Third Reich.
10 years from Einstein and wheelbarrows to the single most catastrophic regime in human history. That fast.
And the question this whole episode is chewing on, and I want to put this on the table right now because it is uncomfortable, is why. What was that German problem? Something rotten and specific to that place, that people, that moment?
Or
Or was it a machine problem? Was it something about what happens to any society when the economic machine it's riding on runs off a cliff? Something that could never or could literally happen anywhere at any time to anyone, to us.
And I need to say the thing we always say up front. We're not here to hand you a conclusion tonight. We're not going to tell you the machine is evil, and we're not going to tell you it's fine. There are two enormous, serious arguments about that, and we're going to make both of them as hard as we can, and then you're going to do the thinking. Same as always.
What we are going to do is follow the machine from boom to bust to a dictatorship and back around again. And we're going to find out whether the circle is a coincidence or by design.
Volume 12.
The machine that eats itself. This is the sovereign system, where the fringe meets the framework. Every claim source, the full list is in the show notes, both sides on the table. We don't hand you conclusions, we hand you the tools, and then we turn those tools on ourselves.
Tonight, 100 years of boom, busts, and the strong men who show up right after. A road America almost took and didn't. And the oldest argument in economics, does this system fix itself, or does it feed on itself until it breaks? Volume 12, The Machine That Eats Itself. Okay, before we get to the Germany falling apart, I want to start somewhere that feels small and boring and turns out to be neither. Tariffs.
Yeah, the sexiest word in economics.
Oh, I know. Stay with me, because there's a moment here that's generally wild. 1930, the United States, 1,028 economics, signed a public petition, 1,028 begging the president not to sign a bill.
This is the Smoot-Hawley. Two congressmen, Smoot and Hawley, a giant tariff bill. Taxes on something like 20,000 different imported goods to protect American businesses.
And basically every economist in the country stands up at once and goes, do not do this. This will backfire. And the president?
Signs it in June of 1930.
Signs it anyway. And then what happens?
Everybody else retaliates. Canada, France, everybody slaps tariffs right back on American goods, and the world trade just falls off a table. Over the next few years, global trade drops by something like 2/3.
2/3. So there it is. Tariffs caused the Great Depression. Case closed. Everybody, we did it in one act. Have a great night.
No. And this is exactly the kind of thing we come here not to do.
Here we go.
Because tariffs caused the depression as the bumper sticker, and it's wrong, or way too simple. If you actually go and read the economists, the big names, the monetary historians, the consensus is that Smoot-Hawley made the depression worse and helped spread it around the world, the whole world, but it did not cause it. It couldn't have. Experts are only about 7% of the American economy.
So, what actually caused it?
The real story is duller and actually a bit scarier. The stock market crashed, banks failing by the thousands, and when a bank failed back then, your money was just, well, gone. And the big one the historians point at, the money supply itself collapsed by a third. And the people who could have stopped that, the Federal Reserve, basically just sat there on top of their hands.
So, the machine didn't get murdered by a tariff, it had a heart attack, and nobody did CPR.
That's actually a pretty good way to put it. The tariff was more like the patient's having a heart attack, and somebody decides that it's a great moment to also pick a fight with every other patient in the hospital.
Okay, so why don't you keep pulling me back? Every time I reach for the clean villain, you slap my hand.
Because a clean villain is how they get you. If the whole disaster is one dumb tariff, then the machine's basically fine. You just need smarter guys running it. The scarier possibility, the one worth an episode, is that the machine has a tendency to do this to itself, and the tariff was the symptom, not the disease.
So then what's the disease? Why was the whole thing so fragile in 1929 that a heart attack could nearly kill it?
To answer that, you have to go back because America had already run this exact experiment once before, 50 years earlier, with the brakes off.
The Gilded Age.
The Gilded Age. And people use that phrase like it means fancy, golden, glittery. It means the opposite. It comes from a novel by Mark Twain, and gilded means a thin layer of gold paint over cheap base metal. It was an insult. Remember this, people. It was an insult. It means looks like gold on the surface, but garbage underneath.
And what's underneath?
The end of the 1800s, almost no rules, a tiny handful of men, the railroad guys, the oil guys, the steel guys, own basically everything. We literally call them robber barons. Monopolies so total that they can set any price, crush any competitor, buy any senator.
This is the laissez-faire thing, right?
That's the phrase. French for let it be, leave the market alone, it'll sort itself out. And on paper, it's beautiful. In practice, that era, the gap between the top and the bottom got so obscene that the whole thing started to buckle. Financial panics every few years, violent strikes, people genuinely wondering if the country was going to come apart.
So what fixed it? Because it obviously didn't come apart. We're here.
Well, they installed brakes. This is the progressive era, right after anti-monopoly laws to break up the giants, the first income tax, rules on food and medicine so companies couldn't just poison you outright. Over about 30 years, the society looked at a machine running way too hot and it bolted safety mechanisms onto it.
Okay, so I'm hearing a shape. Machine runs hot with no brakes. Gilded Age. Crisis. Society panics and adds brakes. Progressive era. Is that the pattern? Hot, crash, fix?
That is the pattern. Hold on to it because it's gonna matter more than anything else we say tonight. Hot, crash, fix. The machine overheats, it breaks something, and then, if things go right, the society reforms it and keeps going.
You said if the things go right.
I said if the things go right because in America in the 1930s, after that heart attack, things went right. Barely, but we'll get there.
And in Germany?
In Germany, well, unfortunately, the exact same decade, the exact same global crash, things went as wrong as they have ever gone wrong in the history of the world. Same disease, opposite endings. And the difference between those two endings is the most important thing you think about all week.
Okay, take me back to that wheelbarrow. How does the smartest country in Europe end up burning cash for heat?
You have to start with the war. World War I ends in 1918. Germany loses. And in 1919, the winners sit down at a place outside Paris called Versailles and write a peace treaty. And the treaty basically says, this was all your fault, and you're going to have to pay for it.
Pay how much?
The number they land on is 132 billion gold marks, which is a fake sounding number. So here's the real field version. Somewhere around 200% of everything Germany produced in a year before the war. So that's 200% of their gross domestic product. An insane amount of reparations.
Twice the entire economy as a bill.
And there's a guy in the room who loses his mind about this, British economist on the delegation named John Maynard Keynes, and he quits, walks out, and writes this furious little book saying, "You fools, you think you're ending a war, you're planning the next one. If we aim deliberately at the impoverishment of Central Europe, vengeance, I dare predict, will not limp."
Vengeance will not limp. In 1919, that's a chill.
He calls the short 20 years early. Now, you know I have to do this.
Here it comes. He's going to complicate it.
I have to, it's the job. Historians actually argue about how much the reparations really mattered. Some of them point out that Germany ended up paying only a fraction of that number and dragged its feet on purpose, and that some of the money chaos was a political choice. You can make your debts disappear by wrecking your own currency. And it also lets you go, look at how cruel the treaty is. We can't possibly pay.
Wait, so the hyperinflation was partly on purpose?
Partly, that's one serious read. The point is not a simple mean treaty broke Germany, but whatever the mix of causes, the result is the wheelbarrow. 1923. The money dies, and here's the part that actually matters for our story. Who does it hurt most?
Not the rich. I'm guessing it's never the rich.
The middle class, the careful people, the ones who did everything right, saved their money, followed the rules, trusted the system, their entire life savings turned into stove kindling in about a year. And that does something to a person that's deeper than being poor. It tells them the whole deal was a lie, that being responsible is for suckers.
That's the rage that doesn't go away.
That's the rage that definitely does not go away. That's the rage that goes looking for somewhere to land. Hold that because, and this surprises people, Germany actually pulls out of the hyperinflation. They bring in a new currency. They get loans from America. And by the mid-20s, it's kind of fine again. The golden 20s, cabaret, art, the whole thing, crisis over.
So it's fixed. The brakes worked.
For about 5 years, and then 1929, the American stock market crashes. And remember those loans America made Germany to help stabilize it? America needs its money back now, so it calls in the loans.
Oh no.
And the second crisis hits, and this one is worse because it lands on the people who just survived the first one. Unemployment in Germany goes to 6 million people. Roughly 1 in 3 workers, one third, 33.3% of the population, standing in the street, nothing, not able to feed themselves.
So now you've got a whole country of who've been burned twice, who did everything right twice, and the system left them for dead twice.
Yep. And now watch what happens to their votes because this is the whole ball game and it's all on record. There's a political party on the fringe, angry, extreme, nobody takes it seriously. In the 1928 election, back then things felt okay. They get 2.6%, a rounding error, a joke.
2.6. Okay.
Then the crash, 1930 election, 18%.
From 2 to 18?
July 1932 at the bottom, when the misery is deepest, 37%, largest party in the country, and in January of 1933, their leader is invited to run the government.
And that's Hitler.
That's Hitler. 2.6% to running Germany in under 5 years, and the engine under that number, the thing driving it is the unemployment line. Researchers have gone back and mapped it. The places that got hit hardest economically are the places his vote climbed the fastest.
I want to be really careful here because this is the part of the episode that isn't a bit. What comes next and what the government does is the wrong thing human beings have ever done to each other. We're not going to walk through it, and we're not going to be clever about it. I just don't want anybody to hear percentage and forget what the percentage turns into.
No, it turns into the Holocaust. It turns into a world war that kills tens of millions. That's where this road goes. And the only reason we're standing here at the start of it, looking at the economics, is because
Because if it was a machine problem and not just a monster problem, then the machine is still out there.
And here's the thing that should genuinely unsettle you. This isn't just Germany. There's a study, big one, 20 wealthy countries, 140 years of history, hundreds of elections, and they found a pattern that's almost a law of physics.
Which is,
After a financial crisis, specifically, not a normal recession, a financial crash, the far right gains on average about 30%. Their vote share jumps by a third, over and over. Different countries, different decades, same reflex.
wait, only the far right, not the far left?
That's the eerie specificity of it. After a financial crisis, the anger reliably breaks right toward the strongman, the nationalist, the "it was them who did this to you" story, and it fades after about a decade. Usually, for that decade, the machine breaking makes people reach for the exact kind of leader Germany reached for.
Okay, so that's the case that keeps me up at night. Crash, rage, strongman, and it's not a fluke, it's a repeating pattern with the body count. So I have to ask the big one. Is that just what this machine does? Every so often does it have to eat a democracy?
And that is the oldest, biggest fight in economics. And there are two titans on the two sides of it, and they could not disagree more. One of them says, yes, it's baked in. The machine is designed to eventually destroy itself.
And the other one?
The other one says, no, the eating is the healing, and you're watching it wrong.
Okay, make me the case that it eats itself, the strong version, no straw man.
Strong version. It starts with the obvious guy, Marx, and forget the flags and statues for a second. Just take the mechanical claim because it's cleverer than people think. Marx says capitalism has a bug in its source code. To compete, every owner has to cut costs, which mostly means cut workers or pay them less. But the workers are also the customers, so the machine is constantly structurally undercutting the very people it needs to buy its stuff.
It's eating its own customers.
And it concentrates. Big fish eat little fish, wealth piles up at the top, and so you've got a tiny group owning almost everything and a huge group with almost nothing, and that is, he says, is extraordinarily unstable. It falls over. Capitalism, in his famous line, produces its own gravediggers.
Okay, but Marx has been about to be right for 150 years and it keeps not being?
Hold that thought, and it's the best card in the other hand. We're going to play it. But first, the sharper version, because there's a thinker I think actually nails our specific episode, and almost nobody outside a seminar room knows his name, Karl Polanyi. He writes his book in 1944, same year. Remember that. And his idea is called double movement.
Double movement, okay.
Polanyi says, whenever you try to build a totally free market, one that's ripped loose from society, where land and labor and money are just commodities and nothing protected, it does so much damage to the actual human beings that society automatically recoils. It pushes back to protect itself. That's the second movement.
So the market pushes, society pushes back.
And here's his killer line about the pure free market, the utopia where you just let it rip. A self-regulating market, left alone, could not exist for any length of time without annihilating the human and natural substance of society itself.
Annihilating the human substance of society. That's a hell of a sentence.
And his point about the 1930s is precise. Fascism was a form of the pushback took. When the market has ground people down and the normal democratic channels can't or won't protect them, society will reach for protection. And one of the things on the shelf is a strongman who says, I'll protect you, just give me everything. Fascism is this reading. It's what a wounded society grabs when nothing else is offered.
Okay, that maps exactly onto what we just watched in Germany. The burned middle class, the rage with nowhere to go. The guy shows up offering protection and a villain to blame.
And there's a modern number that puts a hard edge on it. An economist named Piketty, a few years back, huge book. His central finding is this little inequality. R is greater than G. The return on wealth with what money makes just by being money is usually bigger than the growth of the whole economy.
Meaning, if you already have money, it grows faster than the thing everybody else is running on.
which means left alone without a shock like a war or depression or a policy reset, wealth just concentrates forever. The gap widens on autopilot until you're back to the kind of aristocracy, a few families owning the world, which is precisely the Gilded Age setup that was so unstable the first time around.
So the eats itself case altogether is it undercuts its own customers. It concentrates wealth into an aristocracy that makes it fragile. The fragility produces crashes, and the crashes produce strongmen, a loop that ends in a cliff.
That's the case, and it is a serious one, a heavyweight case made by serious people. And if we stopped here, you'd walk away pretty sure that this whole thing is doomed.
So don't stop here.
Don't stop here because the other side is just as strong, and it starts by turning that whole story on its head. The counter titan is a guy named Schumpeter. He coins a phrase you've definitely heard, creative destruction.
I have heard that, and I've never known exactly what it means.
It means the eating is the point. When a new company kills an old company, when the car puts the horse and buggy guy out of business, when the streaming service eats the video store, that's not the system malfunctioning. That's the system working. The destruction is how it renews. The old, bloated, inefficient stuff gets torn down so new stuff can grow. A forest fire that clears the dead wood.
So, where the first guy sees a machine eating itself to death, Schumpeter sees a machine molting, shedding a skin.
And it explains something the Doom story can't, which is why is everyone so much richer than they were? Because here's the fact. Capitalism just immiserates everybody. Story has to explain and really can't. In 1980, something like 4 in 10 people on Earth lived in extreme poverty. Today, it's under 1 in 10.
That's the biggest drop in human misery in history, basically.
In the history of the species, and happened in the decades when markets spread, China, India, hundreds of millions of people walking out of poverty as those economies opened up. If the machine only eats people, that number goes way the wrong way. It went the right way, hard.
Okay, that's a real punch. What else?
The big one, the historical one. Remember Polanyi? Serious society pushes back, and the one thing on the shelf is fascism. Here's what he also said, and here's what actually happened. The pushback doesn't have to be fascism. It can be reform. Because in the 1930s, the same decade, the same global crash that produced Hitler in Germany produced something completely different in the United States.
The New Deal.
Same disease, same double movement, society getting crushed and pushed back for protection. In Germany, the pushback grabbed a dictator. In America, the pushback grabbed Social Security, bank regulation, jobs programs, unions. America looked at the exact same abyss, and instead of a strongman, it reached for reform, and it stayed a democracy.
So, the same setup produced the worst regime in history in one country and a stronger democracy in another.
Which basically disproves the idea that the crash must equal fascism. If it were destiny, America goes fascist in 1933 too. It didn't, so the crash isn't the whole story. Something else decides which way the pushback breaks.
And I'm guessing you want to say the quiet part about the alternatives.
I have to because it's the heaviest weight on the side of the scale. The 20th century ran the experiment of actually abolishing the market, going all the way to the other side, the Soviet Union, Mao's China, and the results weren't a gentler world. They were famines that killed tens of millions of people. They were their own kind of totalitarian nightmare. So when somebody says, just get rid of the machine, the honest answer is the last few times humans tried that at scale, the body count was catastrophic. That's not a debating point. That's a graveyard.
So now I'm stuck because both of these are true. The machine generally does concentrate wealth and throw off crashes that feed strongmen. That's real. We watched it. And the machine generally has lifted billions out of poverty and proven it can reform itself without dying. That's also real.
And that's exactly where the honest person lands. Not on it's doomed and not on it's fine. The deterministic story, capitalism always ends in fascism, is too strong. Germany and America prove it, standing right next to each other in the same decade, same machine, opposite endings.
So the real question isn't, is the machine good or evil?
The question is, what made the difference? What did America have in 1933 that Germany didn't? Because whatever that thing is, that's the thing that decides whether a crash becomes a New Deal or a Nuremberg rally.
And do we know what it was?
We have a strong candidate. And in America, it had a face and a voice and a wheelchair. And in 1944, a year before he died, he stood up and tried to make it permanent. Tried to add a whole second set of rights to the country. And then he died, and it never happened.
And nobody remembers it.
Well, almost nobody remembers it, which is wild because it might be the most important speech of the 20th century that didn't come true.
Oh, okay. Set the scene. 1944.
January 1944, Franklin Roosevelt. He's been president for 12 years. He pulled the country through the Depression and is about to win the Second World War. He's also dying, though most people don't know it. And he gets on the radio and gives his State of the Union address, and he says something genuinely radical. He says the political rights we were founded on, free speech, fair trials, the vote, have turned out to be not enough.
Not enough how?
His argument is, what good is free speech if you're starving? What good is the vote if you're terrified of losing your job, your home, your doctor? He says real freedom, actual, on the ground freedom, requires a floor of economic security under your feet. And he says it like this: we have come to the clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men.
Necessitous men are not free men, meaning a desperate person isn't actually free. They'll take any deal, they'll follow anyone who feeds them.
And then, this is the part, he proposes a whole second Bill of Rights, economic rights, to sit alongside the original ones and listen to the actual list because it's startling how basic and how huge it is at the same time. The right to a job that pays enough to live, the right to a decent home, the right to medical care, the right to a good education, the right to protection from economic fear of old age and sickness and unemployment, the right of a businessman to run a business free from being crushed by monopolies.
Hang on. A home, a job, health care, education, security in old age, as rights like free speech?
As rights, not gifts, not charity, things you're owed as a citizen that a decent society guarantees. He wanted to bolt an economic floor onto the American idea of freedom permanently.
So what happened to it?
He died 15 months later, April 1945, before the war was even fully over, before any of it could be built, and the man with the vision and the political muscle to maybe make it real was just gone, and it went with him. It never became law. It's a ghost. It's the great American road not taken.
Okay, so this is the alternate timeline part, and I've been dying for it. What if he'd lived? What if that passed? What does America look like right now today if in 1945 we'd made those things right? Rights.
So here's the beautiful thing, because we don't have to totally guess, because the timeline kind of exists, just not here.
What do you mean?
A bunch of other countries, the ones wrecked by the war, rebuilt in the late 40s, and a lot of them built exactly this. Western Europe, the Nordic countries, they wove healthcare, housing, education, old age security into the deal of being a citizen, and in 1948, a global declaration of human rights that Eleanor Roosevelt herself helped push through, carrying Franklin's idea, but a lot of those same economic rights on paper for the whole world.
So, the second Bill of Rights sort of happened in Denmark?
Sort of happened in Denmark. And this is where I have to do both sides again because it's tempting to make those places sound like paradise, and they're not.
Give me both.
Upside, those countries generally have universal health care. Nobody goes bankrupt because they got sick, which still happens here constantly. Less poverty, and some of them more of that thing we call the American dream. A kid born poor actually has a better shot at climbing than a poor kid born here. That's real, and it's measurable, and it should sting a little.
And the downside?
Taxes that would make an American faint. Some argue it comes with less dynamicism, fewer of the giant world-changing companies. Notice the trillion-dollar tech companies are mostly American, not Danish. The typical American on paper actually earns more and has more buying power than the typical European, and that's a real debate about whether those cozy systems work, partly because those countries are small and tight-knit in a way a giant, widely diverse country isn't.
So it's not a free lunch, it's a trade. More security, less horsepower, maybe.
It's a trade, and reasonable people look at that trade and come down in totally different places. Honestly, which brings us to the actual live question for anybody sitting here in the present, looking at a world where inequality is climbing back to the Gilded Age levels.
Right. You said that number earlier and it's stuck. The gap between the very top and everyone else is heading back to where it was in the robber baron days.
Back toward that, yeah, after being way more compressed in the middle of the century. So the live question is, if you think the brakes are coming off the machine again, what do you actually do about it? And there's a menu, and we're going to lay out that menu, and we are pointedly not going to order for you.
The menu, go.
Option one, basically FDR's New Deal liberalism. Keep capitalism, but put it back the brakes on. Regulate it, tax the top, strengthen the safety net, fix the machine, don't replace it.
Option 2.
The Nordic model. Go further than that, full-on social democracy. Still a market economy, still a private business, but with a big, generous welfare state wrapped around it. Worth saying, those countries bristle with Americans calling them socialist. A Danish prime minister once basically said, "Stop calling us socialists, we're a market economy."
Which is a good reminder that these words are slippery. Okay, option 3.
Option three goes further still, actual democratic socialism. And in America, the group carrying that flag right now is the Democratic Socialists of America. And I want to describe them accurately because they got a cartoon by everybody recently. They're not calling for the Soviet Union. They've started back in 1982. They were tiny for decades. And then after 2016, they exploded, formed a few thousand members to something like 100,000.
And what do they actually want? Not the caricature, the real thing.
Their pitch is some things shouldn't be all for profit at all. Healthcare, housing, the basics. And the workers should have a real democratic say in the companies and the economy they're a part of, not just owners. Medicare for all, big public investments, workplace democracies. They mostly work inside the Democratic Party rather than as their own party, as a couple of the most famous younger members of Congress came up through the movement.
And the case against them?
Critics say that the minute you start decommodifying everything and having the government guarantee it all, we're wandering back toward the stuff that went catastrophically wrong in the 20th century, and that you'll kill the golden goose dynamicism that made us rich in the first place. Supporters say that's a smear, and that they're talking about Denmark, not the Soviet Union, and that the real radicals are the people letting inequality run back to 1890.
And there's an option 4, right? The other direction entirely?
Absolutely, and it's a serious one. The free market answer. The problem was never too little intervention, it was always too much. That the crashes and the cronyism come from governments and central banks meddling, propping up the big guys, distorting the money, and that a genuinely freer market with less interference would be more stable and more fair, not less. That the brakes themselves are what keep breaking the machine.
So the menu runs from free the market more all the way to take big parts of it off the market entirely, with FDR liberalism and the Nordic social democracy in the middle.
And every single one of those has a smart, sincere people behind it and a real argument. And it is genuinely, completely not our job to tell you which fork to take. That's yours. That's the whole point of having a mind.
But we can give people a way to think about it because underneath the whole menu, underneath Germany and America and Denmark and the robber barons, there's one question that actually decides it. And it's the thing that made America 1933 go one way and Germany 1933 go the other way.
And it's not about left to right at all. It's about something way more basic. It's about brakes. So, what's all of this really about? And it's not just economics, it's any system at all, because some systems, when they start going wrong, correct themselves. And some systems, when they start going wrong, make themselves go more wrong. Feed on it and speed up.
The difference between a thermostat and a fire.
That's exactly it. A thermostat notices it's too hot and turns the heat down. It pulls itself back to the middle. Fire notices it's hot and gets hotter. The bigger it gets, the faster it grows until there's nothing left to burn. One corrects, one runs away.
So the tool is, how do you tell which one you're looking at, whether it's an economy or a company or your own life?
Four questions. We call it the runway test, and the one underneath all four is the system correcting itself or eating itself? So the runway test is four questions for any system: an economy, a company, a country, a friendship, a habit. Number one, the loop. Does success in the system feed on itself or fight itself? When somebody gets ahead, does it get easier for them to get further ahead? Money making money, power buying more power. That's a runway loop. Or do gains meet resistance that pull things back towards the middle? Name which way the loop runs. Runaway loops don't stop on their own. That's the definition of a runaway. Two, the brake. What is the thing that's supposed to push back at the extremes? And is it still connected? Every stable system has one. In an economy, it's the anti-monopoly law, taxes, union, a central bank. In a democracy, it's elections and courts and a free press. In a life, it's a friend who tells you the truth. Find the brake, then check whether somebody's quietly cut the cable. Three, the pressure. When the loop runs too far and people get hurt, where does their anger go? It always goes somewhere. The Polanyi's lesson: society always pushes back. The only question is whether the pressure has a legitimate door to go through. Reform, a vote, a union, a hard conversation, or whether every door has been locked, so it builds until it blows out through the wall. Blocked pressure doesn't vanish, it just changes address, and the new address is usually uglier. Four, the exit. Can this system change itself from the inside, or does it have to break to change? A system that can still reform is alive. A system that has removed every mechanism for its own correction, every break, every door is functionally already eating itself and hasn't finished yet.
The loop, the brake, the pressure, the exit. So run it on 1933. Both countries, same crash.
Germany, the loop, runway, a shattered economy spiraling, each collapse feeding the next. The break, a young democracy with weak, disconnected brakes and barely any safety net. The pressure, enormous, and every legitimate door felt locked, so it blew out through the wall, and the wall was a strong man. The exit gone. By 33, the system couldn't reform itself. It broke catastrophically.
And America, same year?
Same runway loop, same crushing pressure, but the brakes, though rusty, were still connected. The courts held, the elections happened, the press was free, and the pressure came. There was a door. You could vote for a guy promising reform, so the pressure went through that door, into the New Deal instead of through the wall. The exit held. The system changed itself from the inside instead of breaking.
So the difference between the worst thing that ever happened and a democracy saving itself was whether the brakes were still connected and whether the pressure had a door.
That's the whole ball game, not left or right, brakes and doors. And notice the tool doesn't tell you whether capitalism is good or evil. It tells you what to look for. Are the brakes connected? Do people who are getting crushed have a real door to push their anger through? If yes, system's probably correcting. If the brakes are cut and the doors are locked, you're looking at a runaway, and it doesn't matter what flag it's flying.
And you could run this on anything, not just countries.
Run it on a company where the top keeps taking more and the workers have no say and no union. Loop, brake, pressure, exit. Run it on an addiction where every drink makes the next one easier and you've stopped answering the friends who tell you the truth. Run it on a friendship, a marriage, a group chat. Anywhere there's a loop that might be running away, ask where the brake is and whether it's still connected.
So we opened with a wheelbarrow full of money and a question: Germany problem or machine problem? Where do we actually land?
I think I think it was actually both. And that's the uncomfortable answer. The machine really can run away. The loop is real. The crashes are real, and the crashes really do go looking for a strongman. That part isn't paranoia. It's a documented pattern with a horrifying body count. Polanyi wasn't wrong that a market left totally alone will grind people down until they grab for anything.
But
But it's not destiny, because America stood in the exact same fire in the exact same year and walked out still a democracy, not because Americans were better people, but because the brakes were still connected and the pressure still had a door. The machine didn't decide Germany's fate. The brakes did, or the missing ones.
And that's the part I actually find hopeful, which is a weird word for an episode about the Third Reich. But if it's not destiny, if it comes down to breaks and doors, then it's a choice. It's buildable. You can connect a break, you can open a door.
And you notice when somebody's cutting one, which is maybe the most useful thing this whole episode gives you, not a side, a smoke detector.
And look, we told you at the top we weren't going to order off the menu for you, and we didn't. Whether you think the answer is freer markets or a second Bill of Rights or something in between, that's generally yours. We're not a Jersey. We don't want to be. The second we tell you what to think, we're just one more person yelling. And God knows you've got enough of those.
What we want is for you to be able to look at any system, the economy, your job, your country, your own life, and actually see whether it's correcting itself or eating itself. Because you can't fix what you can't see, and most people never get taught how to look.
Which is your sovereign win this week. Pick one system in your life, just one, your workplace, a relationship, your money, a habit you've got, and run the runaway test on it. Honestly, is the loop running away? Is the thing that's wrong making itself more wrong? Where's the brakes? Is it still connected? And if the pressure's building, does it have a door or is it looking for a wall?
And if you find a system in your life with a runaway loop, cut brakes, and no door, you don't have to fix it tonight. Just see it clearly. Seeing it as the whole first move.
And the pickle report, which I need this week emotionally after all of that.
Oh God, please just take us home.
Kevin, LinkedIn Kevin. Kevin's Artisani pickle empire has, and I quote his post, achieved total vertical integration. He bought the cucumber farm. He bought the vinegar supplier. He bought the little glass jar company. He is now the only pickle in his entire local market.
Kevin became a robber baron.
Kevin is a Gilded Age monopoly of pickles, and I ran the runaway test on him because I'm sick now. You've done this to me. The loop, every competitor he crushes makes him stronger. Runaway, the break. There's no antitrust cop for Artisani pickles, so none. The pressure. The other pickle guys are furious, and the exit?
Let me guess. No exit.
He raised his prices 40% because he can. The town revolted, and a farmer's market co-op just formed specifically to destroy him. The pushback found a door, Dave. The double movement came from Kevin. Polanyi is happening in a parking lot on Saturday mornings.
Oh man, the machine that eats itself, even in pickles.
Especially in pickles.
Here's where I land. Every system that's ever lasted, a country, a company, a marriage, a life, wasn't the one that never went wrong. Going wrong is guaranteed. It's the one that could still hear the people it was hurting and change course before it hit the wall. That's it. That's the whole difference between a new deal and a catastrophe. Can this system still hear and can it still turn?
Breaks and doors.
Brakes and doors. Check yours, check the ones around you, and when you see somebody quietly cutting a brake anywhere at any scale, understand exactly what you're looking at.
Be the architect.
The Sovereign Investigation, Volume 12, The Machine That Eats Itself. Every source is in the show notes. Thanks for thinking with us.